Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Let's do a quick startup of Taugs Hanger's beautiful rendition of the UH-1H or B205A1 Huey. There is a manual included with the download if you're on PC, or if you purchase from the marketplace, either PC or Xbox. There is a QR code on the marketplace that will take you to the manual. At the end of the manual, there's two additional pieces of information or documents that are attached that will help you operate the Huey. There's the extended checklist, and then there are flow documents. The numbers on the flow directly correspond to the numbers on the extended checklist. And if it's yellow, it means an action needs to be performed. If it's not yellow, it just needs to be checked. Okay, let's run through the startup flow. So I like to do it sitting from the seat, like you're looking up at the aircraft, instead of looking directly at the panels. So you may want to set up panel views, but I like to do it from the view that I would actually have if I was sitting in the aircraft, so I would have to turn my head and look. So first things first, they're not functional, but I would check all of the fuses and make sure that the rotor brake is stowed. So the rotor brake, you can see it's either on or off, but we want to make sure that the rotor brake is off. So we'll go through the fuses, and then we'll start with the dome lights and pitot heat. We don't need any of those. I like to have the nav lights on flash and the beacon lights on, so they're already on right there. And then continue to the wipers, make sure they're off, cargo release is off, check the heat and check the bleed air are in proper position, and then we'll come back to the lighting and we'll go through those. I don't need any lighting, I'm in daytime right now, so I'm okay. And then we'll check that the inverter is off. We'll set the AC power to, or power select to AC, which is in that by default. By default, you're going to be on essential bus. The cover is on, but by default the main generator is on. You want to check that it is, and then close the cover. Check that the switch is normal on for the essential bus. Check that the generator switch is in start, not standby. Turn on the battery, and then you'll get the warning horn. So the first thing that you want to do is come down to the panel and turn the horn off. So I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see the stuff a little bit better. So horn off. I do things in a little bit different order than the checklist because I'm here already. So I'll turn the fuel on and I'll check that the governor is on auto. I'll come back up and check that my hydraulics and that my force trim are on. And then I'll do the fire test. So we'll check that the fire test lights, and then we'll do the fuel quantity check and make sure that the fuel quantity gauge does what it's supposed to do proper, so it goes all the way down to 0, and then it'll come all the way back up to the fuel quantity that you have. By default, we're full tanks. So you do want to check the test light next. So then I'll come back down. So I did those two checks. I'll come back down, we'll test, everything lights up, and then we'll reset. And that is how you get this master caution off. Okay, so we're looking good right there. Those are all the pre-start things that need to be done. So then the next thing we need to do is we need to check our controls for free and clear movement. So I'll move all of the controls, put them back into center. I'll check the throttle works properly, and then you want to make sure that it's past the idle release. So you'll take the idle release, push it back in, and take the throttle back to 0. That is all your checks, and now we're just about ready to start. So it's not exactly clear in the manual the difference between what the actual aircraft checklist says and how they've stated it in the Taugs Huey manual. So the Taugs Huey manual does this based on one of the beta testers' experience with the operator that he flew with, and they don't quite follow the manual. The manual actually says, the Bell aircraft manual actually says to roll the throttle up to the idle release and then roll it back onto the idle release. But some operators just so that you're ready for a hot start in case it happens. They will roll the throttle up to the idle release, roll it back, push the idle release, and then roll the throttle just back enough so that the idle release button is not popped. That way, once you start the aircraft, you don't have to push the idle release button if you have a hot start and you need to shut the fuel off. So now we're ready to start. So what we'll do is we'll put my controls back. We'll put one finger on the clock start, and then we'll put one finger on the start button. So the start button you can actually access by pushing right here, but it's actually on the underside of the collective. You can't actually see it, but there is a click spot for it right here. But you want to hold the starter until the turbine percentage here gets to 40% or 40 seconds, whichever happens first. This is going to happen first. Failures aren't really modeled, hot starts aren't really modeled, but you can still follow the proper procedures and things should show correctly. So this is the TOT or the EGT, the exhaust gas temperature or the turbine outlet temperature. This is going to go up. It could possibly spike up to the red line. If it goes above that, that's when you worry about a hot start, but I mean, that's not going to happen. You'll see this kind of spike up and then come back down into the green as the engine starts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get ready, and I have this programmed to a button as well as my idle release. And I have it programmed in such a way that you have to hold it down just like you do in the actual aircraft. So you can set this in Microsoft Flight Sim a couple different ways. You can have it just press the button and then you can let go of it and it will just go through the start sequence. But I have it set up so that you press and hold the button. If you release the button, the starter will disengage. If you release the button before it gets to 40%. So, but what we want to do is we want to watch these two gauges right here are important, as well as the torque gauge. You don't want the torque gauge to spike either, but it's not going to be a problem in this startup. So what we'll do is we'll put one finger on the button here to start the clock, and then I'll hit and hold the starter button at the same time as I hit the clock. So I'll go ahead and I'll click that, and then you can see the clock starts moving. And then here this starts moving at about 15%, so we're at 10 right now. About 15%, we can look up and see that the blades start turning. There they go. And then we're going to continue to hold that down. There goes our temperature. It's still in the green, so we're good. There we're at 40%. I can release the button, and we have self-sustaining RPM in the turbine. So now it's going to roll up the RPM, and it should stabilize around 4,000 RPM. Once it does that, that's where the part of the tau queuing, now it's a little bit confusing. You don't roll up the throttle just yet. You just roll it so that it pops that idle release button. So we'll just slowly roll it up. There's that idle release. We'll roll it back against that. We're going to let everything stabilize. As you can see, we don't have any warnings. Everything's starting to come up to speed. Huey's shaking a little bit because Huey's shake. Here's our dancer. And then we'll come back up to the top here, and we'll set our starter to gen, and then we'll turn our main inverter on. There we go. So we're good to go there. Now this isn't essential. You can fly this either way. You can leave it on essential bus, but I like to set that to main gen, and we're good to go for rolling our throttle up for flight. So we'll come back down to the gauges. As you can see, we're below our green arcs, so our RPM limit warning is lit up. And what I'm going to do now is, watching these gauges, I'm going to slowly roll the throttle up because I don't want to exceed 40% torque. So I'm going to roll this up slowly until we get the RPM up to operating speed. And as you can see, I'm rolling up slowly. I'm keeping the torque below 40. If you get the torque up to that point, just stop rolling the throttle for a second. It'll start to stabilize. Now the RPM is stabilizing in the green arc. My torque is going back down. I can continue rolling my throttle up because it's in the governed range. And now we're ready for flight. So now I've got full throttle and my RPM is in the green arc. And we're going to zoom in on that a little bit, because what you want to do is you want to beep this up to the top of the green arc so that it's at 6,600 RPM. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to beep that a little bit. I've got that set to a button. And you can see as I'm beeping it that the torque goes up a little bit. And there we go, there we're at the top There is one more thing that you could do in the start sequence, and that is checking the load on the inverters if you want to switch between the main and the spare inverter, just to make sure that they're both working. But I typically don't do that in the simulator. But we're ready to go. So all of our gauges are in the green, no lights, no warnings. Everything looks good. We're ready to fly. Thanks for watching. Be safe, be kind, and I'll see you in the next video.